The fairy lights strung across my future mother-in-law's backyard in Oakville should have made the whole scene feel like something out of a magazine. 60 people, white tablecloths, my grandmother's pearl earrings in my ears, my fiancé across the patio laughing with his cousins, a glass of Niagara Riesling in his hand, looking like everything I had spent 6 years building myself toward deserving. I took a sip of my own wine and told myself the tightness in my chest was just nerves. Then his mother tapped a butter knife against her glass. The kind of silence that falls when someone important is about to speak settled over the garden. She stood up smoothing the front of her blazer, and smiled at me from across the table. It was the smile I had learned to read over 2 years, wide, practiced, and pointed like a compass needle at something I couldn't yet see. "I just want to take a moment," she said, her voice carrying over the fairy lights and the hum of the QEW in the distance, "to officially welcome Ivy into our family." Applause. My fiancé caught my eye and smiled. I smiled back. "We are so proud of everything she has accomplished. A project manager at 31, her parents must be so thrilled." A polite pause. My parents seated to my left nodded. But a family like ours runs on more than career achievements. It runs on presence, on commitment, on the kind of daily, unglamorous love that keeps a household together. Something in my stomach went cold. My son works long hours. He always has. In our family, the women have always been the ones who kept the home. Really kept it. The cooking, the books, the schedules, the Sunday dinners. I did it for 30 years. My mother did it before me. She raised her glass. "Ivy, I so look forward to you stepping into that role. You'll learn our rhythms. You'll become the heart of this family just as I have been." "Welcome, sweetheart. We're so glad you're here." 40 people lifted their glasses. A few of my own aunts looked at each other. My mother set hers down. I sat very still. The tightness in my chest had moved into my throat. I was suddenly aware of my hands in my lap, one of them bare where my engagement ring usually sat. I had taken it off to knead bread dough that morning, and left it on the kitchen counter at home, a small absent-minded fact that now felt like a premonition. I stood up. My voice, when it came out, was the voice I use in project kickoff meetings when a stakeholder tries to change the scope without a budget conversation. Level, clear, not unkind. "Thank you," I said. "That was really something. I do have 2 questions, though, if you don't mind." The garden went quiet in a different way. "When you say keeping the home, the cooking, the books, the scheduling, are those things your son will also be taking on, or is that specifically my role?" No one moved. My fiancé's cousin put her fork down very slowly. His mother's smile didn't leave her face. It just stopped reaching her eyes. "Well, that's just how our family has always worked. It's tradition." "I see." I nodded slowly. "My second question is for you," I said, and I looked directly at my fiancé for the first time since his mother had stood up. He was looking at the tablecloth. "In this family structure your mother just described, what specifically will your role be? What will you be doing, daily, unglamorously, to be the partner in our household?" Silence. A real silence. The kind where you can hear someone's chair creak 2 seats over. He looked up. His eyes were the eyes of a man who had been caught between 2 fires and was hoping one of them would go out on its own. "Ivy, come on," he said quietly. "She's just being enthusiastic. Can we talk about this later?" Talk about this later. I had heard that phrase before in the months leading up to the engagement. When I asked why we always hosted his family but never mine. When I asked whose name the condo we were looking at would be on. When I asked why his sister kept seeing his mother on emails about our wedding vendors. Talk about this later had become its own language, and I had finally learned what it meant. Not later. Never. I picked up my purse from the back of my chair. "Please everyone enjoy dinner," I said to the table. "Thank you for coming." I walked back through the house, past the framed photos of his family at Wasaga Beach, past the collection of Hummels his mother kept on the hallway shelf, and out the front door. My heels on the driveway were the only sound for a long moment. Then I heard the door open behind me, his voice, then his mother's, then the low bugs of 60 people all talking at once. I got into my car and pulled out of the cul-de-sac before any of them reached the end of the driveway. The drive back to Hamilton was 40 minutes on a clear night. I cried for about 7 of them, somewhere on the 403. And then I stopped because crying felt like a response to something that had surprised me, and I was starting to realize I was not actually surprised. I was just finally seeing clearly. My phone was going off in the cup holder. I didn't look at it. My apartment, mine, in my name, bought with my own down payment 18 months before I met him, felt like a held breath releasing when I unlocked the door. I changed out of my dress. I found my engagement ring on the kitchen counter where I'd left it and held it in my palm for a moment before setting it back down next to the olive oil. Then I sat at my dining table with my laptop and a glass of water and opened a new document. I titled it, Questions. He had moved a significant amount of his things into my apartment over the past year. We had been talking about selling it and buying something together in the West End, something bigger in both our names. I had already spoken to my mortgage broker. I had already run the numbers. He had agreed to contribute $30,000 toward a down payment. I had saved $85,000. The difference, he said, was because he was still paying off student loans and his car. I had student loans too. I had also quietly been the one paying for most of our shared groceries, our shared streaming subscriptions, and the weekend we spent in Quebec City for his birthday. I opened my banking app. I scrolled. I was still scrolling 40 minutes later when my phone buzzed with a text from a number I'd saved as his mother. Ivy, dear, I hope you're feeling better. These things can feel overwhelming when you're new to a family. We'll talk at Sunday dinner and smooth everything over. I'll make the mushroom soup you like. Don't be late. Lorraine, I read it twice. New to a family. As if I were a houseplant that needed time to acclimate. I didn't reply. Instead, I called my oldest friend from university, who had become, over the intervening decade, a family lawyer in Toronto. She answered on the second ring, already laughing about something in the background. When she heard my voice, she stopped. Tell me, she said. I told her. All of it. The speech, his silence, the texts, the down payment numbers. The fact that the condo we had been looking at, a place I had found, toured and fallen for, had come up in conversation at one point as something his father might co-sign on, which I had thought was strange and then filed away and forgotten about until this moment. When I finished, she was quiet for a beat. Okay, she said. Don't sign anything. Don't transfer anything. Don't have any financial conversations with him or his family without me present. And get me the address of that condo. We haven't bought it yet. Good. Then we have time. Ivy, listen to me. This dinner tonight wasn't just bad manners. That was a roadmap. His mother was telling you, and everyone at that table, what your life was going to look like. And your fiancé sat there and let her. That's information. Use it. I hung up and sat in my quiet apartment for a long time. He let himself in just before midnight with the key he still had. I heard the lock turn and felt my entire body go rigid before I reminded myself to breathe. He looked exhausted. He'd taken off his jacket and his tie was loosened and he was carrying a paper bag from the Tim Hortons near the 403 on-ramp. 2 large coffees, a peace offering in a country where coffee is currency. He put them on the counter. He didn't try to hug me. She went too far, he said. I know she went too far. Did you? Yes, obviously. Then why didn't you say anything? He sat down across from me. He had the look of a man who had rehearsed this conversation in the car and still wasn't sure of his lines. Because it wasn't the time. Because 60 people were sitting there and I didn't want a scene. You didn't want a scene where you defended me. Where I started a fight with my mother at our engagement party. Yes, I looked at him. 2 years. 2 years of him being the person I thought I was choosing. The steady one. The one who made Sunday pancakes and remembered my mother's birthday and said he loved my ambition. Can I ask you something honestly? Of course. If I had stood up and said those things about you, made a public list of your domestic duties, announced to everyone we know that your job in our marriage would be to manage my parents' schedule and cook my family's Sunday meals, what would you have done? He opened his mouth, closed it. Because I think you would have said something, I said. I think you would have thought it was worth a scene. He stared at the coffee cups. It's not the same. No, I said. It's not. We sat in the kind of silence that has weight to it. Then he said, she means well. And I understood, with a clarity that felt like cold water, that this was the most honest thing he was going to say. Not, she was wrong. Not, I'll talk to her. She means well. A closing of the door. I told him I needed space to think. I told him I'd like my key back before he left. He looked at me like I'd said something in a language he didn't speak. And then he put the key on the counter next to the coffee he'd brought and let himself out. I didn't sleep. I called my mortgage broker at 7 in the morning and told her to put everything on hold. Then I drove to my friend's office in Toronto. She had already pulled up the Ontario Land Titles database before I got there. I need you to tell me something, she said, when I sat down. The condo. The one you've been looking at. His father, what was the conversation about him co-signing? I don't know the details, it came up once. He said his dad had a good relationship with a mortgage broker and it might help with the rate. She turned her monitor toward me. It wasn't the condo we'd been looking at. It was a property in Stony Creek, a semi-detached, older, nothing I had ever seen or approved. It was listed in my fiancé's name and his father's name, joint owners. The purchase date was 8 months ago. I don't understand, I said. Your fiancé owns a property with his father, she said, steady and precise. 8 months ago. You were already together. Were you aware of this? No. Were you aware he was making a significant real estate purchase? No. She pulled up a second screen. The mortgage on this property is $380,000. Your fiancé's income is, she named the number I knew. This mortgage requires a cosigner. His father co-signed. The monthly payments are $2,100. I stared at the screen. He told me he couldn't contribute as much to our down payment because of his student loans and his car payment. His student loans, she said carefully, are $370 a month. His car is $490. His actual monthly obligations, if we include this mortgage, are $2,960 a month before he buys a single coffee. The room didn't tilt, exactly. It just rearranged itself around a new center of gravity. He's been lying to me, I said. He's been omitting, she said. Which in a financial relationship is functionally the same thing. She poured me a glass of water from the carafe on her desk. I drank it and tried to think clearly. Okay, I said. What does this mean for us? For the new place we were planning? It means he cannot afford what he told you he could afford. It means if you had bought something together based on his stated contribution and then discovered this, you would have been left covering a gap he created. And, she paused, it means his father is already financially entwined with him in real estate. If his family's tradition is for the women to manage the household, the accounts, the schedules, the labor, and his father is already co-owner of his existing property, then I'd want to know what role his family expected to play in any property you bought together. I thought about Lorraine's text. We'll smooth everything over. She wasn't just describing my domestic duties, I said slowly. She was describing the whole arrangement. That's how it reads to me. I asked her what we could do. She told me clearly and specifically. We weren't in a joint financial situation yet, which meant I had time, and time was everything. She recommended I have a direct financial conversation with him, with her present, or at least with everything documented, and that I ask him, plainly and on the record, about the Stony Creek property before making any further decisions. She also told me I should seriously consider whether this engagement was still something I wanted. I drove back to Hambleton in the thin November sunlight and thought about that question the whole way. He came over that evening without calling first. I had texted him to come. I wanted to see his face when I said it. I know about the Stony Creek property, I said, as soon as he sat down. The color left his face so completely and so fast that I almost felt sorry for him. Ivy, I need you to explain it to me, in plain English, not the version where your dad helped you out and it's complicated, the real version. He was quiet for a long moment, then he said, it was an investment. My dad found it. He said it would be a good rental property, that the neighborhood was going to go up, that I should get into the market before I couldn't afford to. When did you decide to do this? About a year ago. We were talking about buying together, but it wasn't finalized yet, and we were engaged. We weren't yet. Not technically. We got engaged in March. This was January. I let that sit. You made a $380,000 financial decision in January, I said. We got engaged in March. You never told me. I didn't think it was relevant to us. It's a separate asset. It's not separate. It's $2,100 a month that you didn't tell me about when we were planning how much you could contribute to our life together. That's relevant. He looked at his hands. My dad said it was better to keep our finances separate until we were married. Less complicated. His name is on your mortgage. That's different. He's family. Something about the way he said it, automatic like a reflex, made me understand the whole architecture of it at once. His father's name on his mortgage, his mother announcing my job description at our engagement party. The pattern wasn't accidental. It was a system, and I had been moving through it without a map. Does your mother know about the property? I asked. Of course. Did your sister? Yes. Everyone in your family knew about a major financial decision you made while we were planning our future together, I said. Except me. He didn't answer. Which was its own answer. I told him I needed more time. I told him to go home. He left the key again, or tried to. I told him to keep it until we had a clearer conversation, that I wasn't locking him out. I was just buying myself room to think. After he left, I called my friend and told her what he'd said. He's not lying now, she said. Which is almost worse. He genuinely doesn't see it as relevant. His family trained him not to. Is there anything I can do? I asked. Legally, I mean, before we make any decisions. You can protect yourself, she said. You can make sure that if you move forward together, any joint purchase has a cohabitation agreement and a clear paper trail of each contribution. You can make sure your name and your contribution are documented separately from his family's involvement. And you can make absolutely sure, before you sign anything, that you understand every financial obligation he has. I asked her to draft a list of what that would look like. She said she'd send it in the morning. I didn't sleep well. At 4 a.m., I was sitting at my kitchen table again with the list she'd sent, and I was writing my own parallel list. Everything I had contributed to this relationship that hadn't been named, hadn't been counted, hadn't even been visible. The birthday gifts for his parents. The dinners I'd cooked when his mother came to visit. The 2 weekends I'd spent helping him move furniture into the Stony Creek property, which I hadn't known was his, which he told me was his cousin's. The cousin's furniture I had helped arrange in a rental house my fiancé secretly owned. I sat with that for a long time. In the morning I called him and asked if we could meet at a neutral place, a coffee shop on King Street that neither of us owned associations with. He said yes immediately, which told me he'd been awake too. He was already there when I arrived, 2 coffees on the table, an echo of the Tim Hortons offering that now felt like a signature move, comfort in a cup as a substitute for accountability. I sat down. I didn't touch the coffee. I've been thinking, I said, about what your mother said at the party. Ivy, I told you. She went too far. Let me finish. He closed his mouth. She outlined a vision of our marriage where I manage your parents' lives, run your household, and subordinate my career to your family's rhythms. And when I asked you about it, directly, in front of everyone, you asked me if we could just enjoy the party. I paused. I've been trying to understand that response. And I think I finally do. You weren't embarrassed by what she said. You were embarrassed that I responded to it. He looked at the table. The Stony Creek property, I continued. That wasn't just an investment you forgot to mention. That was a decision you made inside your family's system. Your dad, your family's broker, your family's money logic. And I was not part of that system. I'm not sure I was ever supposed to be. He looked up. That's not fair. What isn't fair? You're making it sound like I was hiding things on purpose. It was complicated. My dad is old school. He thinks finances should stay separate until you're married. I was trying to respect that while also building something for us. You were building something with your father, I said. I was being interviewed for a position as your family's household manager. Those aren't the same thing as building something for us. He was quiet for a long moment. Then, very quietly, my parents just want to make sure I'm taken care of. I understand that, I said. I'm asking if you want to take care of me. He couldn't answer, not immediately, and not convincingly when he tried. I watched him searching for the words, the easy reassurance, and I saw the gap between who I had thought he was and who he actually was, right there in that pause. I reached across the table and picked up the coffee. It had gone lukewarm. I think we need to take a real break, I said, not to punish you, not because I stopped caring about you, but because I need to understand if the life you're building is one I actually fit into, or if I'm just the person your mother wants installed in the kitchen. He said my name soft and cracked. I had loved the way he said my name for 2 years. I'll have my friend reach out to you about the financial things, I said. The down payment discussions, the wedding deposits. She'll handle it cleanly. I left my coffee cup on the table and I walked out into the cold November air on King Street, and I sat in my car for a few minutes and breathed. Then I called my friend. I ended it, I said. She was quiet for a moment. How do you feel? Like I just set down something very heavy, I said. And like I've been carrying it for longer than I realized. The following weeks were administrative in the way that grief sometimes is. Paperwork and logistics as a way of moving through something too large to look at directly. My friend negotiated the return of the wedding deposits where possible. She sent a formal letter documenting the financial disclosures he had failed to make and the expectations management around contributions. It wasn't a lawsuit, it was a record. Something in writing that said, this happened, and it is documented, and I saw it clearly. He called twice. The second time I answered, he sounded tired and genuinely sad, which I think was real, and he said he understood now why I had walked away. And he was sorry he hadn't been able to be different. I believed him. I also understood that believing him didn't change the architecture of the family he came from, the system that had shaped him, and the fact that I had almost walked straight into the center of it. His mother did not call. I found out through a mutual friend that Lorraine had told people at her book club that I had been too ambitious and too independent for a family like theirs. I think she meant it as a criticism. I chose to receive it as a compliment. In January, I started a financial literacy workshop at the Hamilton Public Library. Wednesday evenings, open to anyone, focused specifically on what women in relationships need to know about joint property, cohabitation agreements under Ontario family law, and the financial conversations no one tells you to have before you move in together, or say yes to a ring. The first session had 11 people. The second had 23. By March, I had a waiting list. I wasn't an expert. I was something more useful. Someone who had been through it, who had asked the wrong questions at the wrong time in the wrong order, and who had then found people. My friend, my mortgage broker, 2 women from the Ontario Association of Family Mediators, who helped me understand what the right questions were. I called the workshop Before You Sign. I still have the engagement ring. It's in a small dish on my kitchen counter, next to the olive oil, where I left it the night of the party without knowing I was leaving it there for good. I keep meaning to decide what to do with it. Sell it, donate the proceeds, turn it into something else. I haven't yet. Some days I walk past it and feel the sting of what I thought that ring meant. Some days I walk past it and feel relieved in a way that goes so deep it's almost like gratitude. The workshops run every Wednesday. The waiting list is long. And every time someone sits down at one of those library tables and says, quietly, "I'm not sure if what I'm experiencing is normal," I think about a backyard in Oakville and fairy lights, and 60 people lifting their glasses, and I think about how I stood up and asked 2 questions, and I think I know exactly where to start.